welcome to the show. Today is October 14th, 2022. Let me start by saying that I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. This presentation is entitled Understanding How Markets Work versus How They're Supposed to Work. And we'll be using stock symbol MMTLP as an example. So what is MMTLP? Well, MMTLP stands for Metamaterials Torchlight Preferred Shares. It's also known as Series A Preferred Shares. And it's basically some oil and gas assets in West Texas, near El Paso. And in El Paso, there's a refinery there, so they can take that oil and gas and, refine it. There are also some pipelines close by there, and there's about 3.2 billion barrels of oil in the ground and some natural gas. And what these assets represent is a 49% revenue interest, basically, in those assets. Again, this is private. This is what's called private land in Texas, which means you don't need a federal lease, by the way. So you can just drill and pump the oil out, put it in the pipeline, and then have it refined in El Paso. What a concept! Anyway, I go over the details of the history of how this stuff came into being. It started out as a company called Torchlight Energy. They merged with another company called Metamaterials. They spun out these assets to the original Torchlight shareholders under the name Series A Preferred Shares. This later became trading under the stock symbol MMTLP. And then they intended to sell the assets or divest of the assets. And now the current process is that they're going to actually spin out the assets into a company called Bridge Hydrocarbons. So I've got two videos about that. They're about 43 minutes and 35 minutes each. They give you the in-depth details as to what's going on. This was just a quick overview. Okay. I also have 4 videos about the spin-out process because that seems very, very relevant. Each video is these videos are progressive and cumulative. They assume that you've watched the previous video. So the very first video to see talks about the S1 process and the S1 details. The second one builds upon that first one, goes into some Q&A about the S1 and what the meanings are behind certain things. Answer some basic Q&A. The third video talks about the S1A amendment, which assumes that you already know everything that's going on in the in the S1. So it looks at what the amendment does and how the amendment is different than the original. And the last video talks about amendment number 2 and compares that against amendment number 1. Okay. So again, the videos are cumulative, but you can see what my thoughts are in them. Finally, is to talk about what the oil and gas assets are. I've got 3 videos about some recent progress in the oil and gas assets. There are about five drilling permits that are currently underway right now. And those drilling permits are basically for these are new drills that are going to be drilled. So there's about 5 wells that are going to be drilled. Or at least they're being permitted for right now. And the last video talks about the 5th well, which is it's actually in the short attack video. And the 4 other wells are described in it looks like 4 more wells. And the very first time we found out about it was described in new drilling by Tug Oil and Gas. This is the 5th well, and this is the one that I go over in detail on the short attack video. So there you go. Thank you, Seaplant, for pointing out that we do have a 5th well. So as you can see, we get resources from everywhere on the web. Finally, if you're brand new to MMTLP and you just want to know what you bought or what's going on with it or how the stock moves, I've got a general purpose video about that. It's about 25 minutes long. It says 1 year of trading on the OTC markets. And if you're new to MMTLP, I highly recommend checking out that video. Okay. On to the topic of this video. Now that we've described how these videos are supposed to work. So I'll be talking about first John Brda's recent tweets. Here's the first one. He said, Volatility is crazy this morning in MMTLP. Only 100 shares, meaning only 100 shares to borrow, which means there will be no legal shares to short. And if we look at the start of the graph of the recent data, as of 10/13, we saw that there were only 100 shares to borrow. which suddenly increased to 45,000 shares during the short attack and increased all the way up to 100,000 shares during this attack. Okay. Next, he also has a tweet that says, hey, market makers can short a stock and not locate or cover for 21 days. In my opinion, we just need to let these cards play out and see where everything lands. When the SEC approves, he's talking about the S1A, he's talking about the S1A2 here. When the SEC approves, we'll see where things go. He talks about short guy, Elephant Analytics, put out a negative piece this morning on Seeking Alpha. Then they hit it. Predictable. I don't know how they win with no shares to borrow. At that time, he thought there were only 100 shares to borrow. They did a sweep of the stop loss limits a while back looking for cheap stock. It's going to get fun to watch. This is the Elephant Analytics article. Came out on October 13th, 2022 at 6:15 a.m. in the morning before the markets opened. Okay, this was the Thursday. What happened later on in the day? Well, they found some shares. They found those 45,000 and 100,000 shares, and they slammed the hell out of it. Okay, the article appears in the morning. The stock drops very shortly after that. This sounds very much like what I like to call short and distort, and the article appears to be justification for opening up a massive short position. So, what do I mean by this? Okay, short and distort is a tactic to basically you short a stock, which means you sell stock you don't own, and then you put out negative information about the stock afterwards in order to drive the price down, and followed by which you may wind up actually slamming the stock some more. You may actually do this in reverse. You may distort first. You may have negative information in order to manipulate the stock price downward dramatically by shorting, right? So by selling a lot of stock you don't own, that's called shorting, you can affect the price of the stock dramatically and cause the price to go down. Now, why do you need justification for a massive short attack? Well, the reason that you would need justification is if you attempt to sell a lot of stock all at once that you don't own necessarily, that can affect the price, and that's known as price manipulation. The SEC does not like price manipulation. They frown upon it, and they usually, note that I said usually, they usually go around and prosecute for that. They haven't prosecuted for this, though, so I don't know. Anyway, it can be considered to be a manipulative engagement on a stock, okay? If all of this is new to you and you don't understand how stock manipulation works and all that, don't worry about it. You're in the right place. I will describe this, okay? Anyway, on Thursday, there were about 5.3 million shares of volume as a result of the massive amounts of shorting that took place. And that dropped the price down all the way to the price on Tuesday. Basically, you lost the gains on Wednesday from the massive attack on Thursday, and you got all the way back down to Tuesday's price. So there you go. On Friday, they slammed the stock again. There was a massive short attack early in the morning when it first started, okay? Today, they slammed it, and they brought it all the way back down to Tuesday's price. Basically, they spent all this energy, effort, shorting the stock, and ended at Tuesday's price, okay? So, this video will tell you about how markets are supposed to work, or how markets actually work versus how they're supposed to work. And we'll be using MMTLP as an example, let's just say. We all understand how free markets work, right? You got a guy with some stock, you got, somebody else with some cash. They negotiate, they say, hey, you want to sell me some stock? I'll give you some cash. They come up with an agreement, and that's called price discovery, okay? That's how, and then they perform the exchange. The guy sells the stock, the other person picks up the stock, provides the cash. Everyone's happy, right? It's called price discovery, where supply and demand meet. That's what we were taught in school. And how does price discovery work? Well, if there's too little stock available, right? If there's almost no stock available, then the guy who has a stock to sell, he's going to question if he wants to sell at this particular price. And the person who wants to buy the stock, naturally, they want to buy it at the lowest price possible, let's just say. But, if the guy only has one stock and he says, hey, nobody else has any stock, I don't want to part with my stock for a small amount of money, he may say, I'll part with my stock for a larger amount of money, okay? So he'll increase his ask, And then the other person will say, well, okay, there's not much stock. I can see that there's not much stock, so it's, I'm willing to buy that stock at this price because, I know it's rare. Okay? The exchange takes place. There you go. Price discovery, right? What about the other way, right? If there's a lot of stock if there's a lot of stock available, if this is a person with a ton of stock, the other person says, hey, I may not want to buy your stock for a very expensive price because I know there's a lot of it available. I can get it elsewhere. Who knows? I mean, you got a ton of that stuff. I don't really need to spend a lot of money on that individual stock, In fact, I may want to give you a little bit of money and you might want to give me a whole bunch of stock based upon that. And there you go. The price of the stock can fall, but buyer and seller are both happy because they received what they wanted, right? They negotiated and came up with an agreement, and they're happy. That's how things are supposed to work, right? That's what we were taught in school. In reality, there's more than one buyer and one seller. There are multiple buyers with different amounts of money, and multiple sellers with different amounts of stock, right? But the mechanism all works out to be about the same. They trade in a marketplace and they come up with price discovery, right? There's multiple bids, multiple asks, and eventually, you get the best one. But what happens in real life? Today, we have liquidity providers. And liquidity providers are people with a lot of money. And they say, we'll stabilize prices for you. Don't worry. We'll provide liquidity. What does that mean, we'll provide liquidity? Well, it means, if you want to sell a stock, we got enough money, we'll always buy the stock from you. Not a problem. We'll always buy whatever the price is. And if you want to sell your stock, not to worry. We'll always accept your sales. We'll always buy, always accept your sales. And if you want to buy stock and there's no stock available, don't worry, we'll sell it to you. Now, the liquidity providers may not have the stock because, they just have money. So what'll they do? They'll give you an IOU. Okay, they have a lot of these IOUs they can just make up out of thin air. Okay, they're also called phantom shares or synthetic shares or whatever, right? They'll say, I can give you an IOU. It's just as good as a real stock. And I drew the IOUs here with a dotted line as opposed to a solid filled in stock, right? So they can provide an infinite number of IOUs. So what happens? Normally, people buy and sell stock, right? The people with the stock, they give it to the buyers. The buyers get the stock, and the sellers get they get the dollars. The exchange takes place, right? But with liquidity buyers, sometimes buyers can't find it. Sometimes buyers can't find a seller, so the liquidity provider provides some IOUs, and later on he transforms those he buys back those IOUs, or he buys some stock from somebody else and clears out that position, right? It's called a short. And in this case, it's called a naked short. Market makers are allowed to naked short by the United States SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. So that's how things kind of work today, or how they're supposed to work, right? They'll have this temporary naked short position that they'll close out and whatnot. But what happens when you have these, what happens to the effect of the dynamics of the market when this happens? Well, originally, way back, we had this concept of, this guy who has stock, he knows it's valuable, he doesn't want to sell it at a low price. He's going to wait for a high price, okay? He's going to wait until the price goes up, and then he's going to sell the stock. And the price discovery happens, and we find in short, if a stock is in short supply, that price may go high. That price may increase significantly. But with liquidity providers, that doesn't really happen. They provide IOUs, right? They'll provide the IOUs. So you'll think you have the stock, but you'll have an IOU for the stock. It's almost as good as a real thing, right? So this is where we are, right? And what happens, when the stock starts to run low? What happens when, when liquidity providers are there and you run out of zero stocks, right? Well, it could be the liquidity providers will keep supplying liquidity, right? They'll provide the IOUs, and the price will never change. You won't know that the stock is in low supply because, as far as you know, you're getting the stock. But in reality, you're getting IOUs. And the stock price never changes because that's what the liquidity providers do. They stabilize the prices so that the stock price won't change too much, and they'll provide whatever is needed, right? And their intention is that eventually someone will, eventually these people will sell their stock, and the liquidity providers will, they'll get their IOUs back, right? That's the idea. But with MMTLP, they're spinning out into a company called Bridge Hydrocarbons, right? An S1 has been filed with the SEC. So the MMTLP shares won't be trading anymore. And there were 165 million shares that were issued. Now, when you buy a stock, you buy it through your broker. And so brokers must supply the shares into your account. They told you that you have the shares into the account, and you've had the shares in your account for quite some time. And they need to supply those shares when everything stops trading, because you'll have new Bridge Hydrocarbons shares, right? Because it's going to spin out to Bridge Hydrocarbons, and there's only 165 million MMTLP shares, so only 165 million of those shares will wind up being converted. So the brokers need to supply those shares into but if there's a whole bunch of alternative shares, if there are a whole bunch of these phantom shares out there, they won't get converted. And these phantom shares need to be converted to real shares. And if they're not converted to real shares, that's called fraud, because you've been told and you purchased what you believe are real shares. You've been told those shares are real shares, but instead you've got IOUs. And if those IOUs default, that's fraud, because you didn't get a share. In fact, your IOU is worthless. Now, is your broker going to be liable for fraud? I don't think so. And your broker doesn't think so. Instead, your broker is going to say, hey, look, we got these IOUs from the naked shorts. We're not responsible for them. They need to clear out their naked short position. And in fact, if they won't clear out their naked short position, we, as the broker to these shorts, will clear it out for them, because we're not going to be on the hook for fraud. Okay? So what happens? That means that the naked shorts have to buy back their shares. The brokers will tell them, you have to buy back your shares. And if they don't buy back their shares in time, then the brokers will buy back the shares for those people who naked shorted. Okay? That's just going to happen, because brokers aren't going to go to jail for those naked shorts. So suppose you got to they tell the naked shorts, hey, you got to buy back the shares, and nobody sells. Suppose nobody's selling. Where are they going to get the shares from? What's going to happen then? Horrible situation for the naked shorts, right? They got to do what's called lift the ask. Well, what's going to happen is what's called lifting the ask, right? The people who say that they have the shares, they're going to say, yeah, you can buy the shares back from me. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you more, right? And you're not going to get a lot of shares. I might sell a little bit of my shares, right? And so the price rises, and it heads towards infinity. Infinity. In fact, it keeps rising up until the naked shorts have covered, right? Up until enough people have sold enough shares such that the naked shorts can cover. And at that point, everything's honky-dory then, right? Now, what I just described is called a short squeeze. And MMTLP described this possible short squeeze explicitly in the S1 Amendment number 2 for Bridge Hydrocarbons. And they did that for a reason. You may ask, why did they do this? It's because of something called risk, right? You need to disclose all the risks that are out there. The SEC requires that S1 filings disclose risk. You need to disclose everything that's out there. In fact, the SEC may have told them, hey, look, there's a possibility of a short squeeze here. You got to describe it. You got to say what's going on. So if you buy during this short squeeze, if you buy during this point in time, when the S1 has been approved, a date has been set, and the brokers are telling the naked shorts, you got to buy stuff back, or we're going to buy it for you, the price may rise significantly, and it may rise much more than the fundamental value of those shares. Okay. Now, how does the SEC feel about short squeezes? They don't like them. They feel that short squeezes are a form of market manipulation because people are buying stock. They're forced to buy stock, right? So they really don't like them, and they hate them. And if you try to create a short squeeze, they will go after you because they will say you are trying to manipulate stock prices via your short squeeze. But really, if you just bought and held shares, you're not trying to create a short squeeze. All you're doing is saying you bought shares and you're holding shares. And if synthetics need to buy, if these people who supplied, IOUs into the market, if these people who naked shorted it into the market need to close their positions, they need to close their positions. That's not your problem. You can't be forced to sell your stock, right? Again, I'm just providing information as well too. I'm just describing what a short squeeze is, because that's what was described in the S1 amendment, S1 amendment number 2. If you buy during the short squeeze, the price may be significantly higher than the fundamental value of those shares. That's just the case. Not financial advice, not a financial advisor. Information is, of course, intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. So that's it. So the other interesting thing about these MMTLP shares is, like I said, they're backed by an actual physical asset. They're backed by 3.2 billion barrels of oil in the ground and a bunch of natural gas, okay? 49% revenue interest in that, right? And oil and gas are at a pretty good price right now. And oil producers, they're producing as much oil as they can in the United States, and oil prices are still high. So they want to go out and produce more. Your President Biden has actually said he would like to see more production. But there's no more production right now. We don't know why. Maybe it's because, the federal land leases are not being available. We don't know. Anyway, we do know that if you have private land in Texas, you can just drill, pump the oil out, put it into the supply, and sell the oil, right? So a lot of people want to have this oil sold. The market is ripe for it. People want to buy this oil. The price is high for oil. And so MMTLP is backed by these oil and gas assets, right? So as we saw earlier, the shorts are at risk. They want to, go and make sure they get their shares back before something like this happens. We know the S1 has been filed already, but it has not yet been approved. So dates have not been provided, right? Their due dates are not known. So shorts will do what they can to try to get back the shares. So what can they do? They might invoke volatility. They might create volatility. They might massively short some more to make the price drop and cause you to panic and sell your shares. You don't have to sell your shares, but you could. A lot of people might say, hey, look, the price has collapsed. I need to panic sell. I need to panic sell now. But other people might say, that looks like a short attack. I'm only up 200% since, I don't know, a week ago or so, 2 weeks ago. Only up by about 200% or so. I wish I'd bought a lot more. I don't know. That's what you call a Chad. I thought this meme was so funny that, the Chad just looks, he zooms out in time, he looks back and says, just a week ago, the price was a lot less. Zoom out. It's all a matter of perspective, right? Anyway, I thought it was funny enough that I made a tweet about it. If you like that graphic, it's available in this tweet that I made. I just thought it was hilarious. Anyway, just to let you know, what was the purpose of this video? It's to let you know something. MMTLP is what's called a hypervolatile stock. I call it a hypervolatile stock. You may not be psychologically prepared to own this stock. If you're not prepared for hypervolatility, this may not be the stock for you. For instance, if you're in a margin account or you've bought the stock on margin with a hypervolatile stock, you might get margin called, So this stock is not for everyone. Make sure you're aware about how this stock operates, and be prepared for possible future short attacks. Be prepared for the stuff to continue going. The price may go up significantly from here, and you may get another short attack, So the fact of the matter is the stock really is not for everyone. Personally, for me, I like the stock. I own the stock, okay? Not financial advice, not a financial advisor. I do me, you do you, okay? Very simple. I'm happy and fine, I'm happy as pigs in the mud with hypervolatile stocks. Anyway, that's just that. So I want to give a quick shout out, however, to Terry, because Terry made a video yesterday called MMTLP Dividend Next Bridge Short Attack. It's pretty good. And in that video, he described the John Brda tweet. I forgot about the John Brda tweets in my last video. So thank you, Terry, for Thank you, Terry, for reminding me. Pretty good. Check out his video. It's very good. He makes a video every single day almost. He will keep you up to date with what is going on with MMTLP. Highly, highly recommended. I just want to give you a quick update on how this particular channel works, how my channel works, by the way. How my channel works is in the description. I'll provide you with chapters and time codes so that you can, you don't have to watch the whole video. You can skip ahead if you want. You can skip to a part that you want to, that you want to see. If you want to look further on, I'll provide links. And there'll be links to what I described in the video, as well as general purpose links like, YouTube channels that are covering, MMTLP, Reddit channels that I use regularly, Twitter resources, check out these, feel free to, so if you're new to my channel, if you're new to MMTLP, feel free to check out, the description. My Twitter handle is Tony's Twits, of course. And I just want to give a big thanks to everyone in the Meta family. I can't list everyone, but you know who you are. There's a lot of people here. In fact, there's a ton of people in the Meta family. So obviously I didn't figure out all of this. I got help. There's lots of people looking at lots of data, and they provided input to me, and I would make channels, If you want to know who to go to for help, check out Metamaterial News on Twitter. He provides a list that is ongoing. Uncle Smokey, Syntax 007, Money Suit is also called Roller Pigeons. Terry Z247 is Terry Younker's, of course. MMTLP Jedi, that is Meta Sport Channel. Check him out. Trading Secret 7, that's Ollie. He's been also covering MMTLP almost every single day for the last few days. He's done a great job. Chances are I probably will not be able to make a video every day. I have tried to in the last week because the price has been going up a lot, and I'm kind of stoked about the stock, to be honest. But don't rely on this channel to make a video every day. Don't rely on me. Anyway, so again, this is a ton of people sharing knowledge and information. And sometimes we make mistakes, No one's perfect. We try not to make mistakes. We do. But the key is that we should be quick to correct any mistakes we make, correct the information, and move forward. That's that's how we operate. At least that's how I operate. Every single person here is an individual. We're not suggesting groups do anything as groups or anything like that. You're free to do anything you want with your own stock, of course. This should be obvious to you. So, you do you. You control you. Very, very simple. If you do own MMTLP, you should verify every piece of information you get on MMTLP. Verify what I say, verify what anyone else says. I try to make it easy for you to verify by providing links. I might make mistakes. Other people might make mistakes. You might make mistakes. If so, just correct it. Try to understand how the stock works and know what you own. That's the key. That's the key to anything, right? Know who you are. Know what you own. And in the end, you do you. I do me. We're all different. Don't worry. It's okay. We each make our plans. We each figure out what we're going to do. Okay. So anyway, this concludes the video. Let me end by saying that I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is October 14th, 2022. And I hope to see you on the moon. This channel is called Market Moves, and my name is Tony. So goodbye.